Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today we're taking on a source stack that requires us to look far beyond the dance floor.
Oh, way beyond.
Yeah, I mean, we aren't just analyzing a music group. You're analyzing a full-blown civilization theory born from urban rubble. We're diving deep into the collective known as underground resistance.
Or you are, and that framing is so essential. You have to see them as a disciplined political resistance movement that just happened to adopt the record label structure as a vehicle.
A vehicle for information.
Exactly. Our mission here is to really unpack how this collective turned the literal ruins and, the economic decay of Detroit into a political and sonic weapon.
Aimed squarely at the capitalist system.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack that Detroit paradox right away, because it's the soil where UR grew.
It is.
On one hand, you have America's most intensely decayed city, a symbol of a failed promise. But at the same time, it was this source of an explosion of Black cultural creativity.
From Motown's glory right through to the birth of techno.
It's a city just defined by that contradiction.
Absolutely. The entire timeline of Detroit, its rise, its subsequent abandonment, that's the essential context for the sound and for the ideology.
So today we'll be looking at it through four key lenses. We've got the social history of that collapse,
The militant anti-capitalist manifesto they wrote.
the powerful Afro-Futurist mythology they created through affiliates like Drexgia,
And finally, the specific, really revolutionary sound design they pioneered using affordable hardware.
that is a massive foundation to cover.
Yeah.
So let's start with the city's history. You can't understand the resistance without understanding what they were resisting.
You have to go back to the 1950s. Detroit was. It was the shining symbol of the American dream.
The engine of global capitalism.
Totally. The auto industry was huge, creating stable, unionized jobs, and the Black community built a strong middle class from that stability. Motown was, the cultural sound of that hope.
But that prosperity was so fragile, it depended entirely on that industrial structure staying intact.
And then came the shift. The
Yeah.
70s, the 80s, just rapid, shocking decay, massive layoffs, and white flight.
And the tax base just vanished.
It evaporated, infrastructure breaks down, unemployment explodes. But what's really crucial here is that the physical decay wasn't just background noise.
No, it actively shaped them.
The sources really emphasize this dystopian detail. Future UR members weren't just witnessing the destruction, they were using the city's ruins, abandoned factories, derelict schools as their literal playgrounds.
That is such a powerful image. If you're treating wreckage as your environment, does that ingenuity, that scarcity, translate into how you use technology later?
It becomes part of your DNA, that sense of forced resourcefulness, of salvaging things. It primed them for what was coming. Because the collapse didn't just give them a theme, it gave them the actual means.
The tools.
The tools.
Yeah.
In the 80s, affordable secondhand analog gear starts flooding the market.
Ah, the classic Roland machines.
Exactly. The TR-808, the 909, the 303. Suddenly, these things were accessible to working-class Black kids who could never afford a professional studio.
So the means of production got democratized out of pure necessity.
That's right. It moved sonic production out of the corporate studio and into the hands of the working class. And the music's initial function wasn't some shiny, utopian sci-fi future.
No, it was about the present.
It was techno that recorded the destruction of the present for the future. It was an immediate document of the collapse, captured in relentless mechanical sound.
That sets the stage perfectly for UR itself. Formed in the early 90s, Mike Banks, Jeff Mills, Robert Hood, and they were not just a label.
Not at all. They were structured more like a paramilitary unit.
Yep.
Or a society mimicking urban military training in info warfare.
Mike Banks had a military background, right?
He did, and he instilled this rigorous, combative ethos. They weren't trying to succeed inside the system. They were building a fortress outside of it.
And central to that fortress was anonymity. The masks, playing in the dark, the name UR. Why was that so fundamental?
It was an explicit rejection of capitalist personal branding.
The star system.
The celebrity star system that Motown eventually got absorbed by. They felt, if you become a celebrity, the system owns you. By wearing masks, they focused you on the message, not the person. The collective was what mattered.
And that message was fiercely political.
Yeah.
So let's get into their manifesto. What are the central pillars of the UR ideology?
It all stands on independence and autonomy. So the key tenets are restoring Black community autonomy.
Okay.
The belief that music is a weapon in an information war.
Right.
And the idea that independence is the only way to resist a system that's designed to fail you.
And they tie that industrial history into the future with this idea that techno is future political thought. What about mechanical coexistence?
Well,
That's a mouthful.
it's a radical reinterpretation of Black labor history. Black workers were cogs on the assembly line, right?
Right. Alienated from their labor.
Mechanical coexistence is moving from being a cog in the machine to controlling the entire factory floor, owning the means of digital production. You coexist with the machinery. You command it to articulate a political future.
And the collective had these distinct personalities. Mike Banks, Mad Mike, he was the military commander.
Banks is the sound of the ground war, the militant image, those heavy bouncing kicks that sound like marching aggressive square waves. But his commitment wasn't just sound.
No, he put the money back into the community.
He used the profits to fund real-world operations like submerged distribution, to restore community autonomy and empower local artists. He took the fight to the physical streets.
Then you have Jeff Mills, who goes in the complete opposite direction, the cosmic thinker.
Mills is the architect of the space war. He expanded the vision outward to an extraterrestrial perspective. For him, the problems on Earth, capitalism, racism, they were too entrenched. You had to operate outside of that system.
And his DJ style reflected that.
Oh, yeah. Frantic construction. He was famously fast, using 3 or 4 turntables, not just to mix, but to build something new, these dense layers of sound.
That urgency is so clear when you listen to his sets. And then the third founder, Robert Hood, brought this kind of solemnity to it all. Religious minimalism.
Hood wanted to strip the music down to its absolute essence, but not just for the sake of it. The goal was to let you hear the urban afterglow.
The what?
The urban afterglow, the sound of the decaying city, the empty space, the silence left behind. It feels like a prayer built on pure rhythm. Just the kick, the snare, maybe one synth line slowly rising. It's minimalism as a tool for survival.
So if Banks was fighting the urban war and Mills the cosmic war, their key affiliate, Drexciya, took on the sea war. And this is where Afro-Futurism gets really profound.
This is Drexciya, James Stinson, and Gerald Donald. They created the myth of the Drexians.
An underwater civilization.
Descended from pregnant women thrown from slave ships during the Atlantic trade. This wasn't just an allegory, it was an incredibly detailed, fully imagined parallel history.
The level of societal detail is just astonishing. I mean, they created a whole government and educational system for this myth.
They did. This civilization in the central colonies was biologically adapted to water, used hydroelectric power, and communicated with sound waves. And crucially, they had a direct democratic council and mandatory music education.
Where the records were historical documents.
Exactly. Music literally carried their history, their laws, their survival instructions. It's the perfect embodiment of UR's philosophy that sound is information warfare.
So how do you even translate that myth into music? An entire aquatic civilization that requires some serious sonic engineering.
It absolutely did. They engineered what they called the folk music of an aquatic civilization. They weren't just making techno, they were meticulously mimicking underwater physics.
So you're hearing things like...
You hear low-pressure bass changes that recreate the feeling of intense water pressure, sharp frequency cutoffs that sound like the lightless deep sea, and very specific resonant bubble sounds that simulate underwater breathing.
It's those aha moments where the philosophy just clicks with the sound design. Let's look at a key track, like Jupiter Jazz by Galaxy 2 Galaxy. That's basically Mike Banks.
Right. And what's surprising about that track, given UR's militant reputation, is how deeply spiritual it is. It's an E minor, so it's introspective. But the key trick they use is creating the illusion of constantly ascending harmony.
How do you fool the ear into hearing notes that are always rising?
They use these...
The equation. Drum plus delay equals new percussion.
Right. The initial drum hit is less important than its decaying echo, so the track feels like it's constantly collapsing and rebuilding itself. The cold void of space and the wreckage of the city are one and the same in that sound.
So we know the Roland TR-909 was the rhythmic engine. What other gear was key to achieving this sound?
The 909 was definitely the spine for UR's classic aggressive sound. But for those other effects, Drexciya's sound, for instance, really relied on the Korg MS-20 filter.
For the water pressure effects.
Exactly. Its aggressive filter could mimic that dense, shifting pressure, especially when you pair it with an 808's booming bass drum.
And what about the thing that unifies Mills's space tracks
Yeah.
and Drexciya's underwater sound, that expansive quality?
That was often the Eventide H3000 effects processor. That piece of gear was essential for the deep space reverbs, the vast echoes, the watery metallic sounds. It gave both visions their unique sense of depth and alienation.
Context is everything with a resistance movement. How does UR's Detroit sound compare to other scenes happening at the same time, like Chicago?
The comparison to Chicago House is so vital, geographically close but ideologically distant, where Detroit was hard, metallic, and anti-capitalist.
Chicago House was warm, celebratory.
It was. It was spiritual in a communal way, focused on togetherness. They were responses to two different Black urban crises. Detroit faced industrial death. Chicago faced political marginalization.
And then abroad, in Europe, especially Berlin, UR's blueprint was picked up so strongly. Why Berlin?
Berlin connected so deeply because it was also a city of ruins in the early 90s after the wall came down. Places like the Treasure Club. They didn't just hear cool new music in UR, they saw a blueprint for reconstruction.
An alternative society from wreckage.
Detroit provided that model for Black urban futurism, and Berlin, dealing with its own literal and ideological wreckage, just localized it. They recognized the sound of systemic collapse.
As we pull all this together, it's just so clear. The UR is much more than a genre. It's a critical perspective on urban life, on machinery. The argument is implicit. The future can't be saved by the old systems. It has to be a new civilization, created and controlled by the Black community.
And that ideology is maybe more necessary now than it was 30 years ago. In an age of AI integration, automation, widespread urban surveillance, UR's critiques of mechanized capitalism just become more and more crucial.
Music is a warning.
It's a warning, and it's a weapon designed to reclaim the future from forces that want to control it.
They took the wreckage of Detroit, digitized the trauma, and armed it with rhythm.
Yeah.
That belief that independence is the only means of resistance that really sticks with you.
It should. UR forces you to reconsider what music is even for. If listening to them is, like the sources say, excavating the future buried in the rubble of the city, then we have to ask a question.
Yeah.
What is the sound of your city's present collapse, and how will you sonically resist it? UR showed us the tools are there. The real work is constructing the new civilization.